You know, this is what every single last king needs to understand. And this is take two of the video, you know. This is take two of the video. Even though my beginning monologue of the last video, you know, my first take of this, you know, it was a masterpiece, you know. I'm gonna do it again. You know, but anyway, currently I'm in the cut, you know, on campus at school in this nice room, you know, very quiet. And I should be studying for my Math 2, Calculus 2 exam I have on Thursday, but I'm obsessed, you know. I'm consumed. I'm completely driven. And what am I consumed and obsessed by and with? You know, I'm obsessed with becoming. You know, I'm obsessed with the why, the purpose and the why pass any and all of them. You know, I'm obsessed with the constant battle against self, the constant unraveling, the constant equating, the constant solving. You know, I'm obsessed with my own human condition, you know, seeing myself through it, seeing myself reflected and, you know, mirrored back through it. I'm obsessed with solving it. I'm obsessed with, you know, just piecing it all together, realizing it, realizing myself through it, realizing myself through the human condition. And this is what I do constantly. You know, I'm up to like 2 a.m. just thinking, reflecting, realizing, uncovering. I'm obsessed with truth and meaning through it, through the human condition. You know, and all of this, all the loves, all the battles against self, any and all of them, you know, it's just another form it takes to show me myself. You know, it's just another form it takes to show me myself. You know, I'm constantly realizing myself, and that's what I'm obsessed with, the constant realization. I'm seeking the whole through it. You know, I'm getting little pieces of the whole through all the parts. You know, for every reflection, every writing, every realization, I'm getting pieces of the whole, and I'm obsessed with all of it. I'm obsessed with the process. I'm obsessed with the constant becoming. That's what I'm obsessed with. You know, to put it into words, that's what I'm obsessed with. That's what I'm constantly driven by. But anyway, this video is about conflicting ideologies. You know, the KingPill is honestly, you know, from the very beginning, what can really be considered the KingPill's biggest op, or at least one of them, you know. And that is honestly the ideology of fuck girls. I don't know if this is gonna get me demonetized, but fuck bitches, get money, get drunk, get high, scam. Basically the ideology of hedonism, you know. And to explain it, hedonism, because people don't know what hedonism is life's purpose is in nothing more than the pursuit of pleasure. You know, life's purpose is in the pursuit of pleasure, fulfilling of one's desires, fulfilling of desire. Life's purpose is in pleasure and desire. You know, and that is what the fuck bitches, get money, all of that. That is the ideology of that. You know, that is what that is about. Hedonism, you know, pursuing pleasure, getting pleasure, fulfilling desire. You know, that is life's purpose, and that is the goal of my life, you know, to do all of that. You know, and that is the opposite of the KingPill. You know, it's a perfect yin and yang. You know, the KingPill, you know, or at least one of its forms, you know, because the KingPill is in the becoming, but the KingPill represents order, structure, discipline, self-improvement, and becoming more than this human conditioning, overcoming this human condition, you know, overcoming self. That is what the KingPill represents. And the opposite, you know, the fuck bitches get money, that hedonistic, you know, that's the complete opposite. Together, they're perfect yin and yang. And true self-mastery isn't in completely shunning, completely suppressing, you know, trying to erase that side of you. Because that's always going to be there. That lower self, that lower nature, that more animal-minded nature, that uncivilized, as you could say, not to throw shots, nature, that uncivilized side of you, that's always going to be there. True self-mastery is an integration, integrating that side of you, not suppressing it, but learning from it, observing it, reflecting on it. That is true self-mastery, integrating it. They call it integrating the shadow, and that basically means, not completely erasing it, but learning from it, learning about yourself through it, realizing through it. That is true self-mastery. But anyway, to go deeper into this ideology, deeper into this lifestyle, this viewpoint, this is basically an ideology that most young people my age, and people in general, humans in general, live by. Life's purpose is in the pursuit of pleasure, is in the pursuit of desire, and, you can even see it reflected in the media, social media. This is what is being pushed to people. And there's a reason this is being pushed to people, because this keeps you as the perfect consumer, because this ideology is basically about the whole, fulfillment for me as a person is in the external. What defines me is in the external. I'm not my own constant. I'm defined by the external, and they want you, the powers that be, they want you under that ideology, with that viewpoint, with that mentality, with that lifestyle, because it keeps you as a perfect consumer. It keeps you always wanting more, always desiring more, not sitting with yourself, not realizing that, I'm already whole, but thinking that the whole, what completes me, is in the external. That's going to keep you as the perfect slave, the perfect consumer. I profit off of you. You're a perfect cog in the machine. I'm making money off of you, and you're building my empire for me. So they want you thinking like that. But this ideology is basically, what is going to complete me is not within me. The whole isn't within me. The whole is in the external. The purpose, life's purpose is in the pursuit of pleasure, is in the pursuit of desire, is in fulfilling desire. And, this is the ideology of basically a lack of true purpose. I don't have a true purpose outside of myself. I don't know, I don't really know myself, I don't know my why. I don't know my purpose outside of any and all of them, so I'm just going to, pleasure feels good. The next adrenaline rush feels good. The next dopamine hit feels good. The next, hit of validation feels good. And I'm just going to chase that because I don't know myself. I don't have a true purpose. Some even say this is the ideology of a bum. Because honestly, you don't truly have a why. You don't truly have a purpose. And with this ideology, with this lifestyle, you're going to see that eventually, it burns itself out, because desire is nothing more than a hamster wheel. You think you're going somewhere, you think you're fulfilling the desire, but really, you're not going nowhere. You're always going to be wanting more. The nature of desire is that it inherently is unsatisfiable. It will never be satisfied. Desire will never be satisfied. So, you're basically going nowhere. And eventually you're going to get tired. You're going to burn yourself out. And two paths are going to present itself, to you. You're going to become bitter at the world, resentful. And you might even off yourself, bitter, empty and stuff like that. You might even double down on the desire, and then that's total self-destruction. Or, you realize yourself through the desire. You realize yourself through the desire and the suffering that the desire brings, the suffering that desire brings, whether those desires are met or not. So all roads, like always, all roads lead back to self. All roads lead back to self. Like the saying goes, the force for evil ultimately serves the purpose of good. The lower self, the ego, the pride, the fulfilling of pleasure, the chase of pleasure ultimately serves good, because you realize yourself through those things. You can realize yourself through those things. Some people, they don't realize themselves through them, but it serves the purpose of good because you've realized yourself through them. And this is why, you see some bops, they turn towards God afterwards, and religion really is just another tool. When you strip everything away, all the dogma, all the beliefs, all the practices and cultures, religion is nothing more than, another tool for self-realization. All roads lead back to self. But this is the opposite of the KingPill, but really, I got no beef with them. I'm not going to try to change a person that is on this path, you know, because ultimately change can't come from anything external. It can't come from force, you know. When it comes from force, it's not true change. True change comes from, you know, yourself, comes from the internal, comes from the desire to want to change. So somebody on this path, you know, I'm not going to change them. You know, I can't even cap my girl on this path, her, you know, herself. Um, she has a lack of true purpose, a lack of a true why outside of herself, you know, and she's just gonna have to realize herself on her own. You know, I could reflect things back to her, but she has to realize herself on her own. You know, I could reflect back to her worth, that she's the most loved girl, and you know, the purpose of love is for self-realization. You know, the whole thing is, you know, self-realization. I could reflect herself back to herself, you know, but ultimately she has to change for herself. And the person on this path, they have to change. They have to change for themselves. You know, they have to realize themselves. You know, you can't force the realization. And that's another thing. You can't force a realization you can't control. You know, there really is no control. You know, I could die right now, you feel me? There is no control. You know, the only thing you could control is yourself. You know, you can't control any outside events, you know, and thinking that you can is going to cause you to suffer. But anyway, you know, that's it.